Up is the hive mat. In New Zealand it tends to be called the hive mat, but overseas it tends to be called the crown board or the inner cover, the inner lid. It's basically a solid sheet of some sort of material, usually hardboard, with a 10mm high lip around it, similar to the same height as the base. That goes on top. That way, the reason we use this is, besides ventilation and protection against invaders and stuff like that, is that it helps, the bees will propolise that down, so it needs to be pried off. And if this is on here and that gets propolized down, the actual cover, it would be very difficult to get that off. It is very good for insulation and it has lots of other interesting functions. So this one is a homemade one with just strips of wood glued and stapled onto the cardboard. Then other varieties is, this is a one from Ceracell. It's a hardboard but laminated, some sort of melamine type thing. And then it's got the wood frame, but the wood frame is half lap and it's grooves in there which it slots in. So it's on both sides, the gap. You can use plywood, but be very careful not to use treated or marine ply. And another thing is quite common is to have a hole in the crown board. Now that has lots of different functions that we'll go through later, from putting a feeder on top, or for them cleaning up the trappings, or for helping with ventilation, but we'll go through that. And then another interesting thing to do is one made of perspex. This one's just still got, I've just made these, so I've still got the covers on them. These go on here. These are good for winter because if you don't want to kill your the bees by opening up and having a look, you just want to see how they're doing. You can take the lid off and you can see inside how the bees are doing. It will get propolized up and waxed over time, but if it's airtight, then and there's no light shining through, then it's less likely. It'll do you for quite a few seasons. And there's other things that we can do with that. And then the lid. On top is the lid. These are homemade wooden ones that sit on, slightly larger, so they give a bit of space. And then usually what we do is put a brick on top to hold it down so the wind doesn't get underneath it. This is very useful, but the most common, which I don't have at the moment, which we'll be showing you soon, is the galvanised tin ones which fit on, and they're called telescopic because the two ends are sprung on, so it holds on in place. Now the advantage of those is that certainly if you've got them several hives on a pallet, or you're transporting them, or you want them close together, with a lid like this, they can't go close together, but with a telescopic lid or a galvanised lid, they will be, there's only a very small gaps, they'll be quite snug next to each other. One of the problems with the metal lids is the transfer of heat. They lose the heat in the winter and gain the heat in the summer. So that is one of the things that you've got to be wary of, and that's where a good hive mat will come in. But those things tend to be more important for commercials, whereas for a hobbyist, you could make your own gabled roof, which is quite good. It has good insulation and you can airflow through. You can have the gaps in there. You can fill it full of straw for the winter to keep it warm and help absorb the moisture, and it does look very attractive. One of the drawbacks of the gabled roof is that when you're doing your hives, what you do is you take off the lid and put it upside down next to the hive. So when you're clearing off the boxes, you stack them on top of there, and that way any bees that drop down will drop down into the lid and not onto the grass, especially if by mistake you put the queen in there. And then any bees that are left in there, you can just shake into the hive and brush off, and they're all back in there. Okay, another type of hive is a nuke, short for a nucleus. Now this is where you will probably get your first bees in something like this, which will hold frames inside. And you can buy these from Sericel or from Ecrotech, and they are in a sheet of corflute, and you fold them up and you put a few bits on and you make it. It's got ventilation at the back, and it's got a gate at the front which you can dial round so that the bees can all come and go, or you could put the queen excluder on so that just the queen, all the bees except the queen and the drones can come in and out, or just a breathing hole, so just for ventilation but no bees can come in or out. So you can just dial that round. And then it comes in 3/4 height and full depth. They come in different sizes, usually 5 or 6. You can quite easily make your own out of plywood. There are instructions on the internet, and then you just buy these little gates which you can once again just dial round to fully open, queen excluder or breathing. Put a few air holes at the back, maybe a bit of mesh on the base, and then a tight fitting lid. And these are used for transporting bees, collecting swarms and doing splits and transporting queens. So that is the nukes. Now there are other types of hives besides wood ones which are less common. There's one that's called the Paradise Hive, which is made with polystyrene. Now this is a nuke, so it's slightly smaller, but this is sometimes used for breeding as well. So it's thick polystyrene, hardened polystyrene, and this one has a mesh base, but also this one you could use for, you could either put in 6 frames, or you could open this side up, put a board in the middle and open this side up, and then you can make it into 2 separate hives facing different ways. And this one comes with a feeder that goes on top and a lid. Now over here I've got some full size ones. The whole structure, the whole setup is the same as Langstroth, except it's made of polystyrene and it has some hardened plastic edges to help open up, but it has a different type of base, more like the Hive Doctor base, and the lid on top.